In this video, we'll set up our solar system with the sun and a few planetary bodies. Our objectives will be to create the scene and then populate it with game objects that make up the sun, earth, and moon, and modify their transforms to set their position and scale in 3D space. Okay, let's start by deleting the sample scene that Unity gave us. So if we select the sample scene over in our project tab, we can right click on it and scroll down and choose delete. Or with it selected over here in assets, we can select that and hit delete. Once again, there's multiple ways of doing things in Unity. So I'm going to say delete. Deleting assets is a destructive action. There's no way to undo it. So it's going to ask us to confirm that, which is nice that it does that. So let's go ahead and hit delete because we do actually want to delete this scene. So now over in the file menu, let's click on that and choose new scene. And we actually had that scene open, so we could technically resave it right now, but I'm not going to. I'm going to say don't save that. And now we are presented with a new untitled scene. And when you first create a new scene, it's created, but it's not actually saved. So I can work on it. I can edit it. If Unity crashed or something like that, my computer crashed, I would actually lose my work. So I always like to save right away and then incrementally save as I make updates. So under the file menu, I can save my scene. So let me just choose save. It's going to ask me what I want to call it. And I'm going to call this my test scene. And it's going to also ask us where we want to put it. So you can see I'm in my solar system project in assets. Once again, any game asset you want to save in the asset folder. Just for sake of example, I'll just save it here at the top level. And you can see it shows up in my project tab right down here as test scene. But as you're working in Unity, I always recommend that you stay as organized as possible. So you can see we've got the textures folder, which I'll close up here, and the sounds folder, and the script folder, and the icons folder. And we have our scenes folder. And we want to have our scenes all in the scenes folder so they're easy to find. We know where they're at. So I saved this at the top level, so I want to put that in scenes. So as you might expect, you can just drag and drop the game asset right on the scenes folder, and it will now be a child of that folder or within that folder. Now we can also rename things right here in our project tab. So I can, once again, I can right click on the scene and choose rename. And if I rename it to something like solar system, because we're building a solar system, and hit return, it's going to save that scene file in the new name. It asks if we want to reload that, which we do. So I'll hit reload. And once again, as we make these changes, it's actually making changes on our file system. So I can go ahead and right click on this and say show here in Explorer. On the Mac, once again, it would be show in Finder. And you can see that here in our scenes folder, we've got a solar system scene file. If you roll over it, it says a Unity scene file. So let me go back to our projects. One thing that I like to do in the projects is I always like my scenes to be at the top. In the project view, the project tab generally sorts things alphabetically. So generally, I like to rename scenes. So let me right click on this and say rename. I like to rename this underscore scenes. If I hit return, then it is sorted to the top. So within my project tab, I can always see the scenes folder right at the top. I can quickly identify that and open whatever scene that I want to open, because we're always opening scenes. They're the levels of our game and editing those scenes. Okay, now we have our solar system scene created. You could always tell what scene you're in by looking at the top of the editor, the top of your window on the Mac. And it shows the name of the project we're in and then the scene that we're in. Okay, now that we have our scene created, let's populate it with some of our game objects. So we're going to create the sun first. So we did something like this in the last video. We just created a sphere. So there's multiple ways of doing that. You can go up to game object and choose it, or within the hierarchy, we can create a game object here. So go to this little plus, scroll down to 3D object, and you can see we can create a variety of different primitive 3D objects. I'm going to create a sphere. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to rename this. So it's selected over in the inspector. I can rename it here. I'm going to call this my sun. And I want to position this so we're all kind of working in the same way. So I'm going to set the position of the sun to the center of our coordinate system. So that would be 0, 0, 0. And you can tab between those panels as a quick shortcut. Right now I'm in my Z axis, but if I select out of that, so if I just click on the sun again, it deselects, the text entry. So then I can tap F on the keyboard and zoom right in on the sun. So let me go ahead now in my scene view and switch to a top view. So I'll click on the Y to get a top view, and I could, maybe scroll out a little bit here. So the sun is right there in the middle of my scene view. And I'm going to go ahead and create another astrological body. I'm going to create the Earth. So I'll do that in the same fashion. So under the hierarchy, I'll go to plus, create a 3D object. I'm going to make it a sphere again. I'm going to rename it. This time, rather than rename it in the inspector, I can also just select it here. And if you pull down a little bit on the mouse, it enters kind of a rename mode. Basically the exact same thing that we did over in the inspector, but just another little shortcut there. And I'm going to move this one to position 2. So Unity uses meters as its unit of measure. So when I say 2, it's going to move it 2 meters out in the world in the X direction, based on the scale of the world. And I'll leave it at Y0 and Z0. But this is the Earth, and of course the Earth is smaller than the sun. So I'm going to scale it down. And I'm not going to make this to, actual life-size scale. This is more like, one of those solar system models that maybe you had in science class, made out of little balls with little, metal arms holding them. So it's not going to be to true scale. Of course, the sun is enormous. But we're going to make the Earth maybe half the size of the sun. So I'll set it to X of 0.5, Y of 0.5, and Z of 0.5. So you can see now that the Earth is smaller than the sun. Okay, now we're going to create the moon. And let's go ahead and do that in a slightly different way. Rather than create it from scratch, I can select the Earth and I can right-click on that. And I can choose duplicate. And you can see it duplicated that game object. It's called Earth 1 now. So we want to rename that Moon right away. And you can see that you don't really see it, I guess, in the scene because it's right on top of the Earth. But there's actually 2 game objects right on top of each other. So let's go ahead and move it. So I'm going to move this, change the 2 on X to maybe 1.5. And once again, the moon is probably a lot smaller than the Earth. So I'm going to change its scale to 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. If I make them all the same, it's still going to be a sphere, of course. And you can see if I select off now, we've got the sun, we've got the Earth, and we've got the moon. Now, the thing that looks like the sun there, that is actually our directional light that they gave in our world. If I select it, you can see that. So, I can actually move this out so you don't confuse that light with the actual sun. We'll talk about lights a little bit later. So we've been working in the top-down view in the scene, but notice our game view. So our game view is what the player will see, and our solar system looks a little bit low in the game view. And that's because the position of our main camera. So you can see we've got a main camera in our hierarchy. So let me select on that. And if you look at the position of the main camera, you can see it's 0, 1, negative 10. So the 1 means it's 1 meter high, but we made our whole solar system at 0 high. So if I change the Y here to 0, you can see now it looks like, we're kind of level with the world down here in the game view. Okay, we have the basis of our solar system scene now set up. Make sure to go and do File, Save of your scene, or you can see I can do Control S. On the Mac, it would be Command S. I sort of habitually save things, so of course you can go to the menu, but if you remember that keyboard shortcut and various other ones that are shown here, that is a great way to just hit Control S all the time or Command S on the Mac as you're working on the scene to continually save your progress. So our solar system scene looks pretty basic now, but of course we'll enhance it on the upcoming videos.